When you hold that trauma, you're like, I'm going to the grave with this. No one is ever going to know. Nearly 25% of every man has gone through it. 93% of men have never shared yet. And so they've either turned to drugs, alcohol, high levels of success, or accolades. I do not believe that you can get to full freedom without Jesus Christ in this particular abuse. I've seen many men get to pain tolerance, but not true freedom.
Hey, Liberty Spenders. Today, we are super excited to welcome Micah LaCerte to the show. Mike is the founder of the Breaker Mission, which is an organization dedicated to helping men break through the barriers of anxiety, depression, and addiction. With a rich background in personal training, coaching, and entrepreneurship, Micah has inspired countless individuals to take control of their mental and physical health. Through his engaging social media presence and hands-on mentorship, he empowers men to lead more fulfilling, purpose-driven lives. Join us today because we're going to dive into Micah's journey, the mission behind his movement, his new TV show, his book, and all of his advice for anyone facing personal struggles. Welcome to the show, Micah.
Man, it's happy to be here, Kurt. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm pumped about this. You and I met a few months ago, and it was such an impactful conversation. I wish I could have just recorded that. We would have made it an episode on the show. It was so great, and so I've been super pumped about having you on. And when we talked a few months ago, you were in the process of getting a new project off its feet, on its feet maybe, which is a TV show you're doing with Christian TV Network. So talk to me about that.
So my wife and I are hosting a show called SoulFit TV. We are so excited. This was definitely a God deal, which we'll dive into here in a minute as I share the story and whatnot. But ultimately, it's on Mondays, 6:30 a.m. Central, 12 p.m. Central every Monday going forward. And it really is a blend of faith, fitness, and pain to purpose stories where we bring in scripture, science, and storytelling in a way that really breaks down not only, from a biblical standpoint, but what is going on in the body if you've gone through traumas or pains and whatnot. And one of my very favorite things to do is hearing someone's story go from a really tough place in life through tragic or grief or trauma, and then get onto the other side of it and be able to help other people. And, I think that's just a God thing, of being able to go do that and disciple someone else or help lead someone to healing.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see it. And I like the blend of faith and fitness. And it was interesting. We were talking a little bit about me working on my fitness, but there's an observation I had earlier this week. And I've also, C.S. Lewis articulated it much better, but there's somewhat of a spiritual, I find sometimes I don't feel great. And I make a conclusion, boy, I'm something's not right in my life, or I don't feel good in my spiritual walk. And this week I was, kind of feeling kind of a little cruddy. I came back from a conference, I had a little bit of a head cold, and I'm thinking, am I really having spiritual problems, or is my body just not in the right place today, right? And so I think there's sometimes this connection between spirituality and fitness that we might separate it and say, well, that's one thing. If you can be fit, that's good. Like if your body's, and if you're spiritual, that's another thing, but they're not, people don't see them as wired together, but you're doing a whole TV show of them being together. So how do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, I believe that the physical, the spiritual, and the mental all run parallel with one another. I believe that God was honest and truthful when he said the body is a temple and to take care of the body. And because we don't want to be in bondage of anything, if we are sick and we're in places that we can't fulfill what God needs us to do, then some of that comes back onto our own discipline. Sometimes there's uncontrollable situations that happen with health issues, but a lot of the times in what's going on is it's the daily choices we're making or the lack of choices that we're making when it comes to working out and activity. The body is created in a way that if we move it and we're active, it can actually heal itself. And so that once I think you connect all of those things together, you go, if I take care of my body, I'm not only glorifying the Lord, but I'm able to fulfill what the Lord needs me to do on an even deeper level.
Yeah. Well, I find that to be true in my life because I fall into the trap of, well, I've let my body go, and now that impacts how I feel, right? And that impacts my spiritual life. And so it's important to work on. And how do you see the show? Is it so if I were to watch a typical episode, what would I expect to see?
So you're going to see a array of multiple things. There's going to be a fitness element to it. So there will be some working out and teaching people some exercises and workouts and really the motivation on that side. We have a spiritual side where we're going to get into the Bible and really break down some scripture. My wife is a trauma-informed coach, so we'll go into much deeper-rooted stuff, not surface level. We kind of don't do much surface level. We really go to root of issues and dig in from there so you can understand not only from a scriptural standpoint and what the biblical side is teaching us, but also the neurological side of what is going on in your body, maybe from something that happened when you were 7 years old and you're not understanding why that shame is still there. And then we're going to take people on retreats. So we have a retreat business called SoulFit Retreats, where we do essentially like real life ecclesia. We're doing marketplace ministry within these retreats. That's amazing, where we may have 20 to 30 people from around the world come together in an amazing location. Our next one's in Costa Rica. And we come together, we create safe places, and you just see breakthroughs in people's lives happen at every single one of them. We've done baptisms. I mean, it's just a really powerful pocket of time there. So we'll be able to bring in some of that as well. And then our in-studio stuff, we bring in guests that have really fascinating stories. Some of these guests are going to be very well known. Like I had mentioned to you, people will know these people. And some of them are the mother that lost a husband, that is just relatable to those people out there that may be grieving and really don't know where to turn and whatnot, and have those powerful type of stories. So we just bring all that in and really just try to showcase the Lord kind of in what we're doing with all that we're doing.
Yeah. Well, you answered one important question for me, which is, it sounds like I need to have sweatpants on when I watch the show.
Yeah, I mean, you could have some sweatpants on. We'll definitely take people through a workout. It's, the shows are only about 30 minutes long, so it's only a small segment of it, but we're going to have a deeper, like a fitness app that's connected to the show that people can log on, and there's longer workouts there. And because we really want to give education, we want people to transform their lives, and really understand the right way of doing it. What we see in society is, there is 1,000 ways to get to a path, but over the years of 50 years of combined transformation that my wife and I have done together and over 20,000 clients globally, we have learned a process that is very effective long term. And, you can get there really quickly by doing X, Y, and Z, but our goal is really the long term. And so, within the app and whatnot, it will give people that ability of real true understanding of the choices that they're making with their workouts, their nutrition and whatnot. And then really hit on the mental side too.
Yeah. Well, and just after this episode will go live, you're going to have a new book out. So is it along the same themes as the TV show? How does it fit in?
Well, there's going to definitely be elements of the book in the TV show, because like I mentioned, we dive a little bit deeper with the show itself. We're going to dive deep into people's stories, and The Breaker essentially is my story, a story that I held for 3 decades. I never went public with that story. It was honestly a story that I felt like I was never going to share. And so in April 14th, the book comes out. We're in pre-launch right now. Went through the whole publishing process, and I mean, it was unbelievable process to get to where it is now. But I believe that it is one of the best, if not best, books in its space on the market right now because of how it's written, and the end being a place of true freedom, not just pain tolerance when it comes to shame and childhood sexual abuse.
Yeah. Well, I know that's the topic of it. You and I have talked about your story a little bit, And I've talked to some experts on this show about sex trafficking and other things. And what I learned, which was shocking to me, was the high percentage of normal people. I don't know if that's the right, just regular people, the people that we see on the streets every day that go through some kind of sex abuse when they're growing up, and so and then it's hard to talk about, right? I mean, it's not something that comes up in dinner table conversation. So it sounds like that's something that took you time and effort before you were even willing to share it and deal with it.
Well, I'd love to dive deep into this, because I think once people, I just don't think people know, just like I didn't know. I didn't understand how normal it actually was to go through childhood sexual abuse. And that's really hard to say, but we have the stats to know that about 1 in 4 women that you come across every single day has gone through something similar as me. And probably 1 to 4, 1 to 5, 1 to 6 men have gone through the same thing. The difference between men and women is most women share at some point, whereas men, 90 to 93% of men never say a word ever and die with it or die from it. And what I mean by that is, when you hold that trauma, you're never meant to hold that. But when we're a little boy, you're like, there's no way I would ever share this with anyone. Imagine what people would think of me and whatnot. And I do believe that shame, especially for men, is probably the number one gripping thing, as far as just, you can't release this, and it's just a straitjacket on you. You can't share it. You're like, I'm going to the grave with this. No one is ever going to know. And I'll tell you, we're looking at nearly 25% of every man that you come in contact has gone through it. 93% of men have never shared yet. And so they've either turned to drugs, alcohol, pornography, food, high levels of success, or accolades is another one. That was me. I turned to accolades. That was my coping, but I also was struggling with anxiety and depression, but nobody knew. I protected it very much so. I used disassociation and different ways of creating a false reality to kind of survive, especially when I was a child. And I had another layer that was very difficult through my abuse. So I went through sexual abuse for 10 years from a man that I loved and trusted, but it was the same man that taught me about Jesus. And so I had this extra layer of not only sexual abuse, which was insanely difficult to get to the point of where I am now, but also, I turned away from the Lord because I just felt like, why didn't you protect me from this? I was a good child. I was reading the Bible, and I was praying, and I was doing all the things you think you need to be doing as a child. And he ultimately used God's name in vain to then do his evil acts on me. And so that took another level of healing that was very separate from the sexual abuse to rebuild that relationship with Christ. But I'm going to make a statement right now. And this is just from 9 years of healing and being in this space as long as I have, and having the research from different institutes out there. I do not believe that you can get to full freedom without Jesus Christ in this particular abuse. I just don't. I've seen many men get to pain tolerance, but not true freedom. And true freedom is being in this position right now and speaking on it in a way where I want to go help the world. And when I tell this story, I'm almost not even talking to myself or about myself anymore, even though I'm telling my story. I'm thinking about the man that I once was, or the child that I once was, that is still holding that pain. My scars are still there, much like Christ's scars were there when he came back. But I use those scars now as proof that I've gone through this path before you, and I know the way to freedom in this. And people out there, these men out there, have to understand, I also turned away from the Lord too, because someone in the church hurt me. But I came up with a statement a while back that I tell a lot of men. I go, were you angry at God or the man that used God's name to hurt you? And I got to also be clear with this. So we always connect predators and pedophiles to men, but about 35% of the population getting abused, it's happening from women. So that's happening too. It's just in society, it's a weird thing where it's like, this is going to sound crazy, but like a 14-year-old boy with a 28-year-old, he's getting celebrated almost, where it's terrible. That's a child. Whereas the other way around, that man's going to get, he's going to prison, And so I think that's the struggle in society that I'm trying to really break through. Not only bring the light to this, but that we have to protect children at all costs. And the men that are still hurting, they're holding that silence. Really, I want to help those men and show that there's hope and there's a way to freedom, and also speak into the families that love those men.
If you're listening to this show, it's probably because you understand something most people don't. Marketing to Liberty Spenders isn't just about ads or tactics, it's about trust. And in the real world, trust moves through relationships. And that's why private introductions and deal flow are such a core part of what we do.
So FastPass is a private introduction and deal flow network for Christian and conservative leaders who already have influence and want to scale fast. It's not open networking, it's intentional introductions between people who already share alignment. We've seen one client land a $25,000 opportunity from a single introduction. Another told us that FastPass has become his largest source of referrals, not because of volume, but because of fit. And yet another closed her equity round at a key moment just due to the right introduction.
When you book a one-to-one consult with us, we're not handing you a list or making big promises. Instead, we're having a real conversation about what you're building, who you want to meet, and whether FastPass makes sense for this season for you. So no pressure, no hustle, and no awkward pitch from us.
Yeah. If you're ready to grow through relationships instead of forcing everything on your own, head to libertyspenders.com/FastPass and book a one-to-one consult with us.
In worst case, you leave with clarity. Best case, the right introductions change the trajectory of what you're building.
Okay, back to the episode.
You mentioned your wife and how she helped you write your book. I heard on another show you were on that you actually met your wife on MySpace. Now, I didn't think that happened. I that MySpace time felt like it was so short, but talk about how the two of you met.
Man, that was, in the book, I call my wife was the third lifeline that the Lord gave me. But yeah, I mean, we essentially met, how romantic is what I'm about to tell you, but we met MySpace in Las Vegas of all places. Yeah. We were, we had both gone there with no intentions of obviously finding a husband or a wife or whatnot. We had kind of communicated a little bit on MySpace. We were both going to this big fitness expo called the Mr. Olympia. At the time, we were heavily in the fitness industry and competing and doing magazine covers and all of that stuff. And so we were going to meet up, take a picture, say hello, and kind of go on with our day. And we met, and it was almost like I knew this woman for a long time. And we instantly just connected, not only from a physical standpoint of I was thinking she was very attractive, but I was like, man, like this is a really amazing woman. And and then from there, 2 months later, she ended up moving to Kansas City. We've been together since. That was, that's 18 years ago.
Wow.
And so, yeah, and that kind of dates MySpace as well. It's kind of funny. But I'll tell you the thing that was the real kicker for me, because I wasn't really walking with the Lord really tightly at that point. I was still pretty angry at the Lord. And 24 hours into meeting her, she asked me a question that no other woman had asked me before. And that was, do you have a relationship with Jesus? Do you have a relationship with God? And I said, I'm a believer, but I'm very angry at God, and I'm still trying to navigate all of this. And I've kind of turned away. And 24 hours after that, I actually told her my story, which we now know is extremely rare. For, there's men now that are listening that have gone through something similar that haven't even told their wives yet, and they've been together for 20 years. And so I just knew in that moment who she was. And I really wanted to start our relationship with I'm just at my darkest, deepest secret that I've held. I just want to put it on the table. And if Lord, if this is the right woman, then she's going to accept me, even though I was terrified, and she held it with me very tightly. The way she responded was very good. And then And again, 2 months later, she ends up moving to Kansas City. We start HitchFit and our businesses, and we've been inseparable since.
Yeah. And I want to talk about HitchFit, but something sort of crossed my mind as you were telling that story. You know, the idea of being angry at God for something in your life. And I know a lot of people have been through all types of tragedy and struggle who struggle with this idea of why, and if God, if you're as good as you say you are, why did I experience this thing? And so you talked about the two layers of, you're dealing with the abuse, but then you were dealing with how it affected your relationship with God. I'd love for you to talk about that second part a little bit. Like, for other people, whether it's sexual abuse or maybe a death in the family or a tragedy, how do you deal with the problem of pain, right? If God loves us, how does he let this stuff happen?
Well, this is going to be kind of a multifaceted answer, because I'll kind of navigate, the listeners on how I actually got there. So I'm questioning, I think we have to take it back a little bit further in how I was taught what God and who he was. And so, this happens in church a lot, especially with children. Certain denominations are very, they want to put the fear of God, but not the fear of God, but being fearful of God. There's a big difference. And so they'll use it as a disciplinary thing rather than like, you need to build a legitimate relationship with Jesus Christ. It was very different. So I looked at God as, he's my father. If I'm good, I'm going to get protected. If not, I'm going to be in trouble and go through really hard things and go to hell. Like, right. It was very black and white, and this is when I'm a kid. And so when I turned away from the Lord at 15, I'm not in the Word anymore. I'm not spending that time with him anymore. I had strayed. I was the one out of the 99 that he was trying to, get me back in, but I wasn't hearing him. I would hear him from time to time. So I never got into crazy trouble, but I was still really angry because I was like, why would I go through something so horrific? Like, and I there was times I didn't want to live, Kurt. Like I was in a really dark place, man. And I just felt like he wasn't there with me. And so when the Lord brought my wife into my life, it kind of reset me a little bit in a way where it was like, you know what? Maybe now is the time that I need to navigate this situation, because for me to be the best husband I can be, I know foundationally I need to get some stuff on point. And I had been through seeing broken relationships with multiple divorces when I was growing up, and I didn't want that. I wanted to have a really wholesome, solid relationship with my wife. And to do that, I knew I needed to be the leader in the family, and I needed to, but I was still pretty fragile and I was pretty weak, even though I, from the outside I had muscle and I was on covers of magazines and stuff. Internally, I was still protecting a 7-year-old little boy inside that was hurt. And so I start having this relationship with Jesus that was and God, I was having conversations with him. And one of the most pivotal points for me was I got down on my knees one day that I was just really hurting inside. And I had a moment come up that triggered me of when I was going through abuse and why he wasn't there and why didn't he protect me. And I'm crying and I'm just letting it out and I'm on my knees. And I just remember saying, I can't hold this anymore. Lord, just reveal yourself to me. Like, please, if you're real, reveal yourself to me. And it didn't happen instantly. But 9 years ago, I was at a Carrie Job concert and the song Forever came on. And if you know that song, there's a piece of the song where it's about the resurrection of Christ and the ground began to shake, the stone was rolled away. And in that moment, I'm just like weeping. I'm like, what is going on? Like, I'm kind of like almost like shaking, like the Holy Spirit hits me with two visions. God has always kind of spoken to me in visions on what's to come. And one of the visions was that I was on a stage sharing my story for the first time. And I was like, there is no way. There is no way I'm doing that. I told just a handful of people at that time. And I'll tell you what, like, God navigated me through 7 years after that moment of deep healing. And I didn't do it traditionally through a counselor. It was me, the Lord, small groups of friends that I was able to open up. Marcus, which we both know is one of those guys, he knew in advance. And from there, I started healing. And God really navigated me through each one of those traumas to get to that particular point. And through that, my relationship with Christ, my leadership of the home, my leadership of my businesses, my health, everything got better and better and better and better. And I started seeing the Lord so clearly in every move that I made. And we fast forward, and this is going to go all the way back to when we first started this episode. I get on stage and I share my story. Okay. And I'm crying, and I mean, it's hard. I'm letting it out, and I'm giving everything that I have. Well, there was an individual in that audience that day that happened to be the general manager of a TV network called Christian Television Network. And he heard my story. We built a really nice relationship over the course of 2 years since that moment. And when they had a fitness couple retire from the show, that's how that opened up. And so how God navigated everything to the point of where we're at now, and the healing of being able to talk about the breaker and everything that we're doing in that mission, as well as now God given us a global platform to be able to share the breaker, but all these other people's stories. I just, like, the Lord has been so grateful. And one thing I'll tell you that really hit home for me, because people will go, why does God allow X, Y, and Z? This is the same God that sent his son to die for all of us. His same son that was ridiculed, that was more than likely sexually abused because he had no clothes on and it was probably ripped off. The same son that got pinned to a cross and died for us. And the same son that said, please, Father, forgive them of their sins. When you dive into that and the understanding of what God actually did for us, and that God was there with me, with you, the entire time that you were going through your pain, and the understanding that even through the evilest of things, God can turn that to good. I'm on the other side now and using this and this really horrific thing that I went through to help other men that are suffering. And so for me, that has brought closure to that answer of why God didn't protect me.
Yeah. There's another thing you said there about a 7-year journey. And maybe
7 years is prophetic.
Yeah. And maybe I watched too many Full House episodes as a kid. I always assumed that transformation took place instantaneously, And in my spiritual life, I have learned that God shows me something, and I don't fully understand the implications of it for years to come, because it's my fault probably, right? Because I have to peel back the layers of growth and maturity. But it's taken me a while to accept that. I want things. I want to have a mountaintop moment, and then everything. I want to and walk off at the end to the music, right? Like I'm watching a movie, or like the Full House. They roll the credits, okay?
Yeah.
Life one, but it's a journey, and even now as I go through big changes. My wife and I go through big changes in our business. Every month I'm thinking, oh, now I understand what God was saying 3 years ago that I thought I understood 3 years ago, but I didn't understand it to the extent and to the deepness of it till today. But I want to make sure we talk about HitchFit, because that's kind of an interesting story there. Now, you met your wife 18 years ago. HitchFit is 17 years old. Yeah. So did you start it with her?
So I actually started HitchFit right before I met her. And again, when she came into the picture, I knew she was going to be my wife. And Diana is kind of a replication of me, like when it comes to the fitness and the faith. Like we live and breathe it at a very extreme level, like we were top level world champion competitors. We were really high in that world. So the lifestyle to us is very normal, where to a lot of people it would be very extreme. It's like, oh man, that you're eating how many pounds of chicken a day and rice and water and sodium and training, and but it's just a part of our identity. It's a part of our DNA at this particular point. So Diana comes into the mix, and I have this HitchFit thing that I had. I was a pioneer in this space. That's another really important thing to say. So my space is really the entry level of when social media marketing started. And it just, at the time, most people weren't using it that way, but I was kind of a marketing background. I was really interested in marketing. I like to see the power of stories and how that, and at the same time, I'm like doing this fitness modeling stuff. And so I was using that platform. And this girl from Canada reaches out, and this is 2006, and she's like, man, I wish I could work with you. And like that one line gave me that light bulb moment of, well, why don't I just make you a plan, and then you can follow it and communicate with me and whatnot. And she ended up losing like over 30 pounds in 12, 16 weeks. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think I have something here. But you couldn't go on Google and look this up. Like it wasn't there. And so I had two challenges. I had to build this program, but also teach people what in the world it was and could it work. And so I started it in this little attic. Sometimes it's somebody's garage. Ours was an attic. And I kind of taught Diana what I was doing with social media marketing. And then we kind of just blended what her gifts were, which were in writing, and my gifts were, which were in marketing. And then we kind of pieced this together with that passion that we love transforming people's lives and bodies. And fast forward 17 years, it's been 82 countries and over 20,000 clients and 750,000 pounds.
That's a really fascinating story. And I know building and scaling a business, that's one of the biggest things that my audience is struggling with. I got a lot of business owners who are on. If you were forced against your will to try to condense what's a lesson that helped you grow, maybe a rule that you would share with any business owner, say if you could get one thing right to get that scaling done, what should it be?
I think one of the biggest things that we had to learn is understanding what you're really good at. And my wife had talents, I had skills and talents, and then what we weren't good at or what we didn't want to do, we needed to hire the people that were good at those things. That was gigantic, because if we're in the weeds doing things we're not good at, we're wasting a lot of time. So I'm trying to eliminate every distraction that keeps me away from doing the things that I'm most excellent at. And that brings in, if you have coders, now I learned every asset of my business, every facet of the business I learned. I wanted to understand Photoshop. I wanted to understand coding. I wanted to understand the language of everything. So when I was communicating with the workers that we've hired over the years, I could speak the language and understand and translate what it is that I needed done, and effectively. So, that was always something. And then, the other thing, I know you asked for one. The other thing is, if you have a brick and mortar or you have employees or contractors, lead with service. Be a mentor type of leader. Someone who pours into your people, that creates a culture that they don't want to leave this place. Because, it all starts with the top and how you build then that foundation up. Regardless if it's the janitor, you're being extremely respectful to that person and you're showing love and thankfulness to that person, or your CFO that is doing all your numbers and all of the stuff that's crucial to your business. It is so incredibly important that these people that are coming to your job or working for you highly respect you and love what it is that they do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hiring out the things we're not good at, I think, is one of the most obvious, but yet the hardest things to do. As you were sharing it, I was thinking about that. I thought, well, my problem might be there's more things I'm not good at than I am good at. But I have gotten good through the years at hiring operators, because that's not me. And rule followers and people who create processes. I'm the guy who shows up and like a hurricane and messes it all up, and then somebody has to kind of clean it up. But I've had good people like that in my life, thankfully. And you've got, in addition to the TV show, you've got a new podcast. Is that already live?
Yeah, it's called A Few Things. A Few Things is the podcast, and it has been a joy. It's my wife and I, and it's very casual, and we're having husband and wife conversations. So it feels very at home, and we dive into all sorts of different topics. And really just break down, the good, the bad, the ugly of a lot of different things. But with the end goal of really, pouring into whether it be a couple or a marriage, to an individual that may be looking for a spouse or going through some entrepreneurial issues, within their business. We kind of talk on a lot of different topics, but just real talk and real life conversations, kind of from our story to theirs.
Yeah. And or is that on YouTube? Where is that located?
That's on YouTube. You can hear it on YouTube. It's on Apple. It's on Spotify. It's on all the big players.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing to catch. But before we come to the end, we always ask our guests the same 3 questions at the end. We call it our rapid fire section or our lightning round.
Let's do it.
Here we go. This is low accountability, but we do 3 90-second answers, okay? The first one I like to ask this way. When you're, decades from now, when you're lying in your bed, your final hours are upon you. How, when you look back at your life, will you know that you've had a life well lived?
On this side of the earth and on the other side of the earth, there's 2 answers to this question. On this side of the earth, I want to know that I gave every ounce that I had and used every ounce of gasoline in my tank to the very last day. I ultimately did. That I did all the work I could on myself to get myself to a place that I could be most effective for the people that I had the opportunity in speaking into. That I was bold in the name of Christ. That's a very important thing to me. Ultimately, I want to see this person in heaven one day. So in whatever moment it may be that I am bold in that I give of my time, and that I continued as I grew. My discernment and my wisdom continued to grow, that I was constantly still trying to educate and get stronger and healthier and whatnot, but that my wisdom grew as I got older to a point where all the knowledge that I gained over my lifetime, I could pour into every soul that I had the opportunity to do, to have those moments with, and so those last moments, of my life, I just hope that I made an impact in somebody's life in a way that helped them get through any sort of pain or healing or a relationship, or a health concern or whatnot. And that really is that side. On the other side, it's really standing in front of the Lord and getting that response I think any believer wants, which is, well done, son, or well done, daughter. You followed what I called you into. And, and we all fall short as believers from time to time, but it's about repentance and stepping back up and continuing to grow and in faith and boldness and whatnot. And so on that other side, hopefully seeing maybe the people that I did have the opportunity to impact, and maybe they're there with me.
Yeah, I'm sure some will be. And I do think that'll be a moment of celebration, right? Seeing our friends and family there. And now for completely different.
Yeah.
So 90 seconds on any topic. It just has to be off topics. It's not fitness related. It's not about your show or anything. Something that's been interesting you lately. Maybe it's got you going down the rabbit hole. Maybe you have sports fandom you would love to share with the world, or a good book you've read, or you're into conspiracy theories and you want to talk about how we never walked on the moon. Whatever it is, what's got you going down the rabbit hole?
So since COVID, something that some people who follow us on social media will know this, but we are like avid, crazy hikers now.
Yes.
And I didn't do it much before that, but we were kind of in situations like, hey, we want to be active. We want to go places. Where is it? And so we started going to national parks. And so we have had some of the most epic hikes you can ever imagine. We went to Norway. We hiked Norway. We hiked
Oh,
Iceland.
wow.
We've hiked. We did Half Dome in Yosemite. We've done Angel's Landing in Zion. We've done some of the scariest hikes. We did Crag Bolton in Norway was one of the scariest things I've ever done in my life. I got off that rock and said, Lord, thank you for protecting me, but I'll never do this again. And for viewers that don't, look up Crag Bolton in Norway. And it's a rock that's in between two little mountain cliffs, and it's 3,500 feet straight down. You're not on a harness or anything. And you take this step out onto this rock. And so for me and my wife, we both love just being outdoors, because we work 7 days a week. We are nonstop. And so to be able to turn that off and be one with nature, to hear the wildlife, to breathe in that air of the sequoias, the redwoods and all of that, and to see that beauty, to get to the top of a mountain peak and then just hear the Lord and thank the Lord for the day that we have, we're really into that. That is kind of our free time right now, which we don't have very much of right now, but we plan on multiple epic hikes per year, and that's usually in the summer months.
That's awesome. I'm not, I wouldn't call myself a hiker, but my wife and I every once in a while do it. And every time we do it, we think, why don't we do this every weekend? We always like it. It's always got this, it's relaxing. We bring the kids sometimes, and if you find the right kind of hike, the kids love it. It's a win-win. But I don't know if there's something sort of mental, like, oh, I gotta get dressed or whatever, that makes you think, oh, and it's Indiana, so we're not, we got to drive a little bit to get to the Hoosier National Forest or whatever. But it's beautiful, some of the hikes around here. So I love it. And then the last question is probably the easiest, but you'll have to choose here. 90-second pitch for, it could be HitchFit, could be for people to watch the show, but who should find you? Why should they find you? How do you help them? Where do they find you?
The season that I'm in right now, I think the most important piece is the Breaker and the Breaker Mission. That's thebreakermission.com. There are just so many men out there that may be listening right now, or wives that love those men that they don't know what to do. And they're holding on to this shame. They're holding on to this pain. I understand deep anxiety. I understand depression, suicidal thoughts, understanding feeling like you're drowning and you just don't know if you can make it anymore. Maybe your relationship with the Lord has been severed. I want to speak into those men and those women out there that are in that position, and just let them know that there is hope, there is freedom on the other side of this. And it's why God has called me into the Breaker and the Breaker Mission to really be a bold, strong, masculine voice in a space that's very dark and bring light into this. So as a society, we can not only help the ones that have been wounded, but also protect the children that we need to protect at all costs. And so for me, the Breaker Mission is the most important mission that I've done in my entire life. All the success that I've had and covers of magazines and all of that, it was all great. But what I'm doing now, this is the most impactful thing that I believe God has called me into. And I just, again, I want to be a voice. And the way that I've seen it is just other men standing because of my own story. And I can't do this alone. And these men getting healing, and we go and move mountains with it.
Yeah, well, that's powerful. And I'm just so pleased to have had you on. So you said the website was thebreakermission.com, right?
Yeah.
So for those of you listening, make sure you head over there, particularly if what Micah's talking to you about, experiencing sexual abuse, really resonates with you, because he'd love to help. And they can also find you. You're on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. If you look up my name, Micah LaCerte, we're in a lot of different places. And then the TV show, you guys can tune in anytime you want. And we're pretty open. I mean, I'm very, very busy on social media, so I always try to write everybody back and whatnot. And so, just reach out to me.
Yes. Well, this has been a privilege. I thank you so much for coming on the show. For those of you who have given us the last 45, 50 minutes of your time, I am so grateful because I know it's valuable. If you got something out of this episode, and I'm certain you did, please click like and subscribe so you can hear more of what we have to offer. And if you want to learn more about what we're up to, check us out at www.libertyspenders.com. We'd love to have you. And until next time, we'll see you.